Yes, welcome back to part 4, final part of this presentation. This is my presentation titled What is Marriage? Another Perspective, the Mystic Philosopher. Now, if you did not watch part 1, part 2, and part 3 in that order, I suggest and would strongly recommend that you do so before continuing with this part 4. So, what is an institution? Or let's talk about a social institution. What is a social institution? As was mentioned earlier in the definition of marriage. According to Wiki Answers, a social institution, and I quote, a social institutions, or rather, social institutions are patterns of beliefs and behavior centered on basic social needs, essentially different elements of societies. Examples include schools, workplace, religious institutions, family, politics, and economy, unquote. Now, please note that these are all man-made institutions and establishments, and that there is no mention of the word love in their definitions. In fact, it is not even implied, at least from my perspective. It is all about wealth. It's all about money and keeping the wealth and the money and distribution thereof in the family. No wonder it is said that it's only few families. I think it's said that it's only 13 families, 13 groups of people who are also intertwined, that runs the planet, that owns everything on the planet, that owns us all, that rules over us all, controls us all, people who we slave for. So when you understand that, you know that to them we are just sheep. In fact, they call us their subjects, their commoners, the peasants. So but that's another subject for another time. Now, a family, please note that these are all man-made institutions. Okay. A family affair means a business affair. So, thus far, I think I have answered question 1 from my 4 questions to the Reverend Doctor and Pastor. Questions namely, could you please define the English words marriage and institution for me? I think I've done so. And I'm open for your questions and your comments and your enlightenment. More enlightenment on this topic. Of course, I couldn't cover everything I would want to because it would take a much longer presentation, but I'm just at least getting into some overlooked aspect of marriage from my perspective. Now, I will quickly answer question 2, now that I've already answered my own question 1, to the Reverend Pastor and Doctor. Question 2, I'll quickly do question 2 to 4. If marriage is an institution, who would freely want to be in an institution and why? Now, from my perspective, the people that would freely want to be in an institution or in a marriage institution, and especially one that is legal, are people who truly know what marriage is all about. Those who truly know that marriage is a business, and a very serious business at that. Those who know that marriage is a business, a corporation, and a corporation that can start with only 2 people, or as little as 2 people, that are serious partners in business, and then grow and mature into a huge and powerful multi-billion-dollar family business that will transcend many future generations. Those who know when to hold a business, when to fold a business, when to walk away from a business, and when to run away from a business. Those who know that they should not allow themselves to go down on a sinking ship, a sinking business, but that those who fight and run away, at least they may live, not if they will, but at least they may live to fight another day. Sometimes smart and shrewd business partners and their board of corporations and the board of corporations know that in order to survive or walk away with their life and their sanity, that they have to file bankruptcy. However, on the other hand, fools who don't understand what business is all about did not take the necessary precaution and what it takes to enter into business, into marriage. They don't understand what it's all about. They will wait until the business and the marriage bankrupt them. Same thing. Some people allow their, instead of bankrupt the business, bankrupt the marriage, if necessary, and that's the only alternative. There's no way to whatever, because of course it happened to me because you didn't do it right. Then they allow the business to bankrupt them. And why get married? That was part of the question. Why get married? Or why get legally married? One, because of the legal status that is associated with being married legally within the system. And all the system's benefit. That's good reasons to get married when you understand legally married. All the system's benefits that comes with it. For your information, same-sex or homosexuals, they didn't, from my perspective, they understand what business is all about. If it was just to live alone and not getting the recognition, not being able to transfer benefits, inheritance, etc. to their partners, to their business partners, I doubt they would take all the ridicule and so have to organize themselves and politically and otherwise to gain that right, which I personally think, once you understand marriage as a business, they should have had in the first place. So marriage is a business. So to get all the benefits, I recommend that you get legally married. For example, if you are not married and you live with a spouse and the person gets sick or whatever, possibly can't even go into the hospital, you can't even make certain decisions to help the person because they are not considered part of that business organization. The board of directors, etc. Anyway, now, so because of the systems, the benefits that comes with it, get legally married. Unfortunately, some people, especially those that are highly religious, think and believe that to be legally married is just to legalize sex with their partners. These are some of these people that, they are some of those people that teach and preach this doctrine in the name of the Apostle Paul, that it is better to marry than to burn. But from my perspective, that is not the reason why sensible and well-informed people get married. Or that is not the reason why they would start a serious business or a corporation. Or this is not the reason why they would want to get married and start, to set up a business that will transcend future generation. Sensible and well-informed people know that you don't have to be legally married or not legally married to have sex. In fact, for some, if not most people, the record will show that they have more sex before they got married than after they eventually got married. Let me quote you this scripture that Paul is alleged to have said or wrote. And I quote, "Now to the unmarried and to the widows, I say that it is better for you to continue to live alone as I do. But if you cannot restrain your desires, go ahead and marry. It is better to marry than to burn with passion." Unquote. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 8 to 9. Now, let me assume that Paul, the Apostle Paul, even though it is alleged by most, if not all, theologians and Bible scholars that he was not married. It's alleged that he did not have a wife or a partner. He had never had a wife, and that he had never had a wife or a partner. And it's also alleged that he was not having sex, and that it is also possible that he had never had sex in all of his life. Now let us assume that he was a wise man. He was still a wise man. And second, let us say or assume that he did not, or rather that he did say and wrote this scripture and admonition in the spirit of wisdom. Then from my perspective, in order for it to make sense, these scriptures to make sense and to be of benefit to its intended target, it would have to be interpreted in and through the spirit of wisdom. Because from my perspective, it would not be wise for him and any man or woman of his alleged caliber and wisdom, a man that is said to be a brilliant student and practitioner of the law of Moses called Torah. It would not be wise to tell someone that it is better for them to continue to live alone. For according to Paul's own sacred writings, the Torah, the Torah that some people call the book of Moses or Moses' law, his God and God of his ancestors, namely Yahweh Elohim, said, and I quote, "It is not good for a man, or it is not good for the man to be alone." Genesis 2 and verse 18. And I would also add that from my perspective, that it is not good for a woman to be alone either. Even though it is evident that the Bible is primarily concerned about men. So if the God of Paul's ancestors say that it is not good to be alone, by who or by what authority does Paul speak? Or who gave Paul the authority to override the word of the God of his ancestors? He may have made a personal decision to live alone, possibly even to live alone like a hermit. But that does not mean that because he thinks that it is good or better for him to be alone, that it should be good or better for others. Now, from my perspective, the unmarried men and women to whom Paul was speaking, were those that understood marriage as a business. And they wanted to get into marriage as a serious business, and not just to get into it because they were horny, because they were burning with passion, horny and burning with passion for sex, and wanted to have sex to let off steam, or to have sex that was sanctioned by the church pastors in order to avoid guilt, a guilt of fornication, and the pastors throwing word at them during his sermons. These were people, from my perspective, who must have had a strong passion and desire for starting a legitimate business, also called a legitimate family business, etc. These people understood marriage as a business that have its perks and benefits, such as children and grandchildren, some of whom they may depend on to take care of them when they are old and sickly, especially when these children know that their names are in the will, that they stand to inherit a lot. These people did not want to die like Paul, without posterity, at least to our knowledge. The widows mentioned here, no doubt, were not some old people that maybe were financially broke, physically and mentally sick, or possibly having one foot in the grave. But it is possible that these were widows and widowers who became so as a result of their business partners dying at a young age, maybe of illness, maybe of accidents, victims of wars, etc. And the truth is that not because one partner in a marriage dies, the other partner should live the rest of his or her life as if he or she is a walking half dead. They have the right to continue their business. Now, question number three, who truly belongs in an institution? Any institution. The answer to this is simple. Only those that are qualified by earning the right to be in an institution, whether are whatever or whichever institution, only they who have earned the right belong there or belong in it. For example, if you are qualified by meeting all the pre-requirements or the prerequisites to be in a learning institution, any learning institution, or if you meet the requirements to be in a penal institution, a mental institution, a financial institution, hospital institution, religious institution, government institution, a marriage institution, you name it, then that is simply where you belong. For you have earned the right to be there or to be in it. With respect to marriage institution though, I think fools shouldn't get involved. I think fools who don't understand marriage to be a business and a serious business should only work as employees for people in business or for institution. Number 4, and is it possible that people that are already in institutions, any institution, and people who may end up in an institution, any institution, may not fare that well? Again, the answer to this one is yes. In fact, the record have shown that when most people end up in some of these institutions, it could mean goodbye, farewell, or welfare for them. Now, my conclusion. Originally, marriage, or to be more precise, Western style conjugal marriages were never designed for poor. Were never designed for the poor, and especially ignorant people. Marriage was not instituted for the peasants, for the subjects, for the commoners, etc. Originally, marriage has nothing to do with so-called love, as most people think they know it today. The idea or the concept of love in marriage today was later incorporated into the institution of marriage by priests, by pastors and religious leaders, etc., mainly to facilitate the poor and hopeless peasants and to make the church money. Marriage is about business and commerce. It is a corporation. It is about family business or a business family. That's what marriage is all about. Family. It's about family, a business family. In order for a family or a business to work, in order for it to prosper and be successful, powerful and strong, it has to be treated as such, as a business. If or when there is a problem in the business or in the family, members just don't run off to some priest or some pastors or some so-called spiritual advisors for so-called counseling, consolation, and readings, etc. They know that they have to troubleshoot, to identify, and to solve their problem or the problem. External experts and specialists are also chosen by the family. And they are only brought in, all these experts and specialists and professionals may only be brought in by the family in or when absolutely necessary to deal with specific problem. Because of gross ignorance as far as poor people are concerned, marriage is about them losing money than gaining wealth. Example, and as the host of the show rightly said, it costs them money to get in, money to stay in, and sometimes even more money to get out alive and well. I add to that, by the way, that was not a direct quote. Even when there are all these Christian ministers, pastors, and others telling people that marriage is about two people falling in love. But if you can read well enough to be able to read the Christian Bible for yourselves, with a dictionary, I suggest, for yourselves, the same book that these preachers are claiming to be preaching from, you may never find where any of the patriarchs, maybe with the exception of Jacob, who some of these same Bible scholars claim was a schemer. Others also argue that he got 2 wives for the price of one, along with a lot of wealth and possessions. However, you may never find them claiming to be marrying for love, or find them marrying into poverty. For example, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did not marry for love, as most people think they know it. Or they did not marry into poverty, or as the vow some people take, for poor. They did not marry to get poorer. They did not even expect that, to get poorer. How can two people with assets? Anyhow, and in order to keep the wealth and power among themselves, and the power and wealth to transcend into future generations, they marry into their own family, their own bloodline, like the royals and the oligarchies of today. For example, if it was all about love, as most people think they know love, Abraham wouldn't marry his sister. Isaac wouldn't marry his first cousin. And Jacob wouldn't marry his cousin either. If marriage was all about love, then Jacob could have left Laban with his 2 wives, or with only his 2 wives and children, and not argue about possessions. He and his uncle, or he and Laban, wouldn't have gotten into some argument over possessions. He went there without anything, but he left a wealthy man, according to Genesis 30:26-40. Solomon was said to be the wisest man, at least in his days. But I am sure that even though he is said to have over 1,000 wives, or have 1,000 wives, or to be precise, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, I can almost a sure bet that none of these wives were peasants and paupers. In fact, there is a scripture that states that his wives were of the royal line, or something to that effect. They were all princesses or queen of hybrid themselves, if you will. They were not paupers. No, they were not into poverty. Now, and none of them came from paupers, as I said, and peasant beginnings. None of his wives are concubines. In fact, if any woman, from my interpretation, wanted to see or taste of his wisdom, Solomon's wisdom and endowment, they had to bring him gift. They have to bring something to the table, not just love. This is business. I'm talking about business. If you're not talking about business, you can fall in love, which is a dangerous to do, because when you fall, you may hurt yourself, you may never get up. And that's why some people always talk how they get hurt. My boyfriend hurt me, or my husband hurt me because he cheated on me. You have another woman, you have an affair, so I'm hurt. Because you fall, what do you expect? If you fall, don't just fall and don't expect to get hurt. So don't fall in love. You should stand in love. Anyhow, that's something else. That's a little distraction here. In fact, any woman, as I said before, who wanted to see or taste of Solomon's wisdom and in his endowment, they had to bring him gifts, like in the case of the Queen of Sheba. And let me quickly quote the examples here. The Queen of Sheba brought Solomon, arriving with a very great caravan with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold and silver, and gold and precious stones. This is in 2 Chronicles 9 and verse 1, the New International Version. And then she gave the king, that is she, Queen of Sheba, gave the king 120 talents of gold. It sounds like enough. I am not sure, didn't do the calculation of what talent is, what that would be equivalent to today, but that sounds like a lot. 120 talents of gold, large quantities of spices and precious stones. There had never been such spices as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Unquote, 2 Chronicles 9 verse 9. Then we are told that King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba all she desired and asked for. He gave her more than she had brought to him. This is 2 Chronicles 9 and 12. And according to Rastas, the Rastafarians, I've heard them say that, and according to their beliefs, King Solomon also gave the Queen of Sheba His Imperial Majesty in his lines, from his lines into her liver. So, according to the Rastafarian movement, to my knowledge, and I stand corrected, Selassie came from the lineage of the King Solomon as a result of her interaction with, a result of his interaction with the Queen of Sheba. Now, this is the end of my presentation on the subject of marriage and the institution thereof. I do hope that you at least find it thought-provoking. And please stay tuned for my upcoming presentation, where I will be sharing some of my perspective on the George Zimmerman not guilty verdict. Very interesting perspective. Then I will, of course, get back to my regular series of presentations called Redemption from the Curse of the Black Spell. I am the Mystic Philosopher, and thanks very much for watching. All your comments are welcome. Please make your comments. If you have anything to enlighten me, the video you'd like me to watch or whatever, I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again.